Hello and welcome, finally, to Highfleet Campaign 3. It's only taken almost a year to get off the ground, but we're here and it's about to begin. To give you some background on this campaign, for the past year, I've had the Highfleet community creating replacement ships for every vanilla ship in the game. Courageouses, Intrepids, Variags, Nomads, everything has been replaced. But not only has it been replaced, the community have submitted their redesigns of the ship and then voted against each other to find what everybody thinks is the best replacement for that particular slot. So what we have is a survival of the fittest designed super fleet of enemy ships that I have to come up against. There are some crazy designs in here. Some of them are super heretical, some of them are very, very cool to look at and aesthetically pleasing, and some of them are just brutally efficient. What this means is I've got to really drastically change my strategy and my tactics. We're going to have a talk about that in this video. The first thing I want to do, however, is just thank everybody who submitted a ship for voting. The ships that you all put in were absolutely fantastic to look at, and it was really fun to discover all the different ideas people had for each different chassis. I also want to thank everybody who voted as well. Thank you everybody for the time and effort you've put into this campaign. I really, really appreciate it. It wouldn't be happening without you. So thank you so much. I'm really flattered and honored, honestly, by the amount of effort that's gone into this. At the same time, if you submitted a ship and it hasn't made it through to the final game, please don't be upset. We had a huge number of submissions, way more than I was expecting. Some of the ships had like over 100 submissions, which is crazy. And I want you to know that every single ship that was in a vote got voted for. And I'm not just talking about 1 or 2 votes, I'm talking about multiple votes. It was really nice to see. Everybody's ships had cool metrics that people liked, and some of them got really, really competitive, down to 1 or 2 votes after quite a lot of votes, which is quite cool to see as well. So thank you again for that. Now, there's also some rules I've had to apply to myself for this campaign. One is that I've tried to keep my information about what's happening as low as possible. There's actually some surprises in this campaign, one of which is that I don't know anything about the Typhon replacements. Some of the people on my Discord in secret have created their own Typhon replacements, voted for them among themselves, and then submitted to me the final winner. And I've put it into the game sight unseen. I've got no idea what its configuration is. I have no idea what its capabilities are. I don't even know if it's a missile cruiser anymore. So that's going to be a complete surprise when we get to Total War at the end of the campaign. We'll see what happens when we get there. I've also had some voice acting done for this campaign. I've engaged a, hopefully to some of you familiar, voice actress and replaced some of the voice lines in the game just for a bit of variety. Let's see if you can spot her while we're playing. Now, the other requirement or restriction on my play is that we all know that I can win a campaign of Highfleet with light, aggressive frigates. I've done really well in my standard campaign with Lightnings, I've done really well in my second campaign with Audacities, so they're out. I'm not allowed to use those. I have to use battleships and battle cruisers for this campaign, and that's what I've built. That's what I'm bringing to the table, and that's what I want to show you in this video. Now, without going into too much detail about what we're up to facing, because I don't know, I have some idea of what we're going to be up against. Primarily, high amounts of missiles, high amounts of aircraft, and everybody has radar. So my old style strategy that I showcased in my first campaign of playing like a submarine with a Sevastopol keeping its radar turned off and skulking around the bottom of the map, we send out little fingers of strike groups, we can't do that here. Those little strike groups will get wiped out in a second, and also I can't use them. And we're going to get detected very, very quickly because we're using large ships. So this is going to be a loud campaign. This is going to be a fast campaign, and this is going to be a brutal campaign. There's going to be a lot of attrition. I honestly don't know if I can make it, but I'm going to do everything that I can to get there. So what have I designed and brought to the table to try and make it as simple or as easy as possible for me to get to my final destination, which is of course Kiva. Well, the first thing I needed to do was design my support group. My support group are the ships that maybe don't capture the headlines. These aren't the roosters of the campaign. These are the ships that sit in the background and do the grunt work of keeping us alive. And one of the most important things I needed to think about was how am I going to defend my fleet from endless missile strikes and aircraft attacks. And what I decided was I needed to fall back on my philosophy from Nebulous Fleet Command and other games that I've played and then put into place a layered strategy of air defense. So what does that look like? What I want to do is mix different weapons in the same role so that we have a layer that if something gets past layer 1, layer 2 can engage it. If it gets past layer 2, layer 3 can engage it, and put as many barriers in its way before it gets to the vulnerable members of our fleet where it can do a lot of damage. So our air defense layered setup is made of aircraft, which we'll use to intercept. Then we've got strategic missiles that we'll keep for interception should the aircraft fail. Then we've got tactical interception missiles, which will mainly rely on as R9s. Then we'll fall back on proximity fused firepower if we have to. And if things get really, really dire, we will have Sea Whiz, but that will not be the most important thing that we've got. So how did that play out into the ship design? Well, the first couple of ships really don't play into that at all. The first ships I designed, because I needed them, were the Drink and the Quench. These are 2 light fuel carriers designed for refueling, but they've got a little bit more of a role than that. They're actually quite fast, so they're also going to take the jobs of scanning for hidden cities and picking up material and components for us in the backfield if we need to refuel and rearm the fleet. They can also go and pick up fuel for us if we need it to top up the tanks, while the rest of the fleet maybe sits in the desert, etc. Not that exciting, but I needed to get them out of the way. The next ships that I designed were the Porcupine and the Hedgehog. Now, the Porcupine and the Hedgehog are maybe something I don't think I've ever seen anyone design before for Highfleet, but these are tactical missile carriers. They are 100% defensive ships. They have no offensive capability at all. They each carry 10 R9 Sprint, which are anti-air interception missiles, and they have an MR12 fire control radar to guide those missiles in, and they're just going to act as defensive monitors to escort our other ships and just act as that extra layer of emergency defense, which I know will fire extra missiles in those situations where we're getting rained down upon and hopefully keep us alive. They're very, very cheap. They're very, very lightly armored. They basically have very little to them, but I think they're going to be really important to this campaign. Now, obviously, that's not the only support ships I designed. I also came up with the Oasis. And the Oasis is the core component of our support group. It's a very, very important ship, and I want to take you through it in a bit more detail. So we'll just jump into that, having a look at that just now. So the Oasis is primarily a sensor support vessel. I don't want to put any of my delicate sensor information on my frontline combat ships, because 1, it's expensive equipment, and 2, it needs to be exposed in order to do the job that it needs to do. But the job that it needs to do is done on the strategic map, not the tactical map, so I can get away with putting it on a lighter armed ship as long as I keep that in the backfield. So this ship has an MR700 radar system, an RS-1 Mars thermal tracking search system with maximum range, and that Mars thermal tracking system is going to be very, very important for this campaign, because it is going to let us know and give us the early warning that incoming strategic missiles are on their way. And I need to stress that we have enemy ships armed with R3 ballistic missiles, KH-15 missiles, and also A100 missiles, and some of these are also radar guided missiles. So we've got a lot to deal with. There's also an MR12 fire control radar system on this ship, which is usually used to guide sprints. However, I haven't actually put any on the Oasis. Instead, we have 6 A100 radar homing tactical missiles on this ship, and the MR12s are there to 1, give me real-time radar information within a limited range of my fleet, and 2, guide those missiles with pinpoint accuracy at any targets that get too close. And the primary job of those missiles is not destroying enemy ships, it's destroying incoming missiles that our airplanes, the 8 T-7 supersonic interceptor bombers, don't deal with. Now, previous campaigns, and I've alluded to this earlier in the video, I've relied on T-7s to just do the Saidi special and just absolutely obliterate strike groups from afar. Trust me, if I try that in this campaign, they are going to get destroyed in seconds. The amount of sprints that the enemy is packing is unreal. So these are primary defense system in this game, in this playthrough. I'm going to deal with a CAP, a combat air patrol, as much as possible. And that CAP is going to be T-7s armed with AA missiles, and their job is first to shoot down missiles and then to shoot down incoming planes. And then if they fail in shooting down the missiles, we'll fall back on the A100s. And they're going to try and hit those missiles, and if they fail, then it goes into combat. We try and get them with sprints, we try to get them with Sea Whiz, etc. The ship has some AK-100s and it has some 37mm guns. They're really not that important, they're there for last-ditch defense. If we're shooting them, something's gone wrong. So that's the Oasis, that's our support fleet. It's not that exciting. What you're here for is what did I build for my battlecruiser and my battleship. So first of all, for those of you like me who don't know a lot about military history, the most layman difference or description between a battlecruiser and a battleship is that the battlecruiser has less armor but is faster. That's the general. I know I've completely made some people angry with that description, but that's, for us laymen, that will do. So the ships I wanted to build would fulfill those 2 different roles, a fast, heavily armed ship and a slower, heavily armored ship. I wanted to build both of them to have excessive defenses either way, punishing main batteries. I wanted to build them to be redundant and have redundancy, and I wanted to build them to be as self-sufficient as possible as well, because they're going to go into combat on their own. The reason I'm building 2 ships is so they can cycle in and out of combat. One can rest and repair, and the crew can recover while the other one is fighting, and vice versa. So the first ship I built was the Rock. The Rock is a battle cruiser, not a battleship. It's faster than the other ship I've designed, but you can see straight away that it has that layered armor design that I'm going to I think will become a little bit you'll see a lot of it, let's just say. It's designed to be fast, and I'll go into it in more detail in a second, but also have a lot of redundancy. And hopefully you can see the way the armor is constructed, so the outer layer can be peeled away, and we still have an inner ship after that. The other ship that I built was the Ocean. And the Ocean definitely is a battleship through and through. I've tried to stick with the bricky, blocky, Romani style for these ships, where I think you get the bigger ships like the Nomad and Sevastopol, but they're not really, in my mind, the real warships of the faction. They're more of the support command cruisers. Variad you could argue differently. So these are more based on the Archangel style and the Comoron and the Bore style of ships. And I think I've kind of hopefully kept to that theme a little bit, kept it a little bit fluff friendly. Let's have a look at these ships in more detail. So the Rock, as I mentioned before, has a layered armor design. It's designed so that the outer layer of armor is always placed on standard hull, and then behind that standard hull, as much as possible, there's another layer of armor behind that. And in some places we have 3 or even 4 layers of armor to protect important subsystems. That outer layer of armor, as I said before, is on standard hull, and that is by design, the idea being that the standard hull and armor is the quickest things I can think of to do armor replacements of and repairs of. And also this ship is designed to be refactored after attrition and ablation has occurred, so that I can reuse it in different configurations if I have to. Ideally, this ship should still be able to move and fight after losing, I would say, about 25 to 30% of its outer structure with no real issues at all. It actually has some interesting design features built into it. It has an integrated Palash network of 6 Palash, 4 flares built into the hull as well, and it has an integral MR12 FCS. There's a fire control system above the bridge that is there to make sure that the 8 Palash built into the hull are able to fire. Sorry, the 6 Palash are able to. No, this one has 8. I don't know why it says 6. This is 8 Palash. The 8 Palash are not there to shoot down enemy planes or zeniths. They're there to shoot down incoming strategic missiles that our planes and A100s aren't able to shoot down, and they need to be kept in our pocket for those situations, because we do not want to lose these to an incoming A100 on R3. That's going to be very, very bad. I've got a Citadel CIC to protect the CIC as much as possible, and you can see that I've built an armored layer all the way around the fuel tanks with all of our FCS contained within it, so that if the fuel tank does somehow get hit, we've got very good fire suppression around it. And as I said, the ship is designed to take a punishing amount of fire before it falls apart and keep fighting. In terms of primary armament, I've gone for 2 Mark II 180 Sarmats. That's 4 barrels of 180mm cannon. I am not good with 180mm guns in this game, I'll be completely honest. I don't like the reload speed, I don't like the lack of autoloader on them, and I also don't like the projectile speed. But I'm trying to take myself out of the comfort zone with this one. I've already designed 2 ships that are way outside my comfort zone. They're probably over-designed, to be honest. So I put these guns on here to force myself to get used to them and to use them. And it is a punishing amount of fire. We also have 6 AK-100s, which anyone who's played the game knows that 6 AK-100s is a lot of firepower, especially if we're going to load them up with prox fuse to act as anti-air defense systems as well. So that's the Rock. The other ship, as we know, is the Ocean. The Ocean is my battleship. If you thought I had layered armor on the last ship, take a look at the top of this ship. It's designed as a bottom fighter, so the top of the ship is what's going to be presented to the enemy as much as possible, and the armor layers there are designed to be ablated away and replaced as quickly as possible without anything serious taking damage. Now, the downside to this ship is I've had to use reinforced hull as much as possible, which will vastly increase the expense of repairing this ship and reduce the speed of repairing it. It's going to potentially turn into a hangar queen, but I hope it doesn't. This ship has 6 integrated Palash. It has 4 flares built into the hull as well. It also has an internal MR12 FCS. It's below the bridge in this design. And again, we have the secondary and tertiary hull set up, as well as my Mark I Citadel CIC, which I think is a really, really cute design. This ship comes with 8 DAT 130mm Molots, so it's got a pretty hefty Alpha Strike, and then it's got 2 37mm as an emergency Sea Whiz. For this design, I've actually included 4 Zenith launch bays. They're built into the hull to protect them from stray fire hitting them. They can launch from behind that hull plating. Thank you so much, community, for showing me how to do that. And again, we have 6 sprints on this design, like I mentioned before, and those sprints are there to shoot down any incoming missiles, strategic missiles, not Zeniths, not planes. That's what the flares are for, that get through. And it's designed to take a beating. This ship is not as redundant as the Rock is, but it still should last a long time, and it should certainly blast those early garrisons while we build up a mercenary army of Tarkans and ships that we can hire and try out some of the community designs as they come up. So that's really the idea behind the fleet. We've got these 2 massive punishing powerhouses of a battlecruiser and a battleship supported by the rest of the fleet, and that puts us in our position to start in the campaign. Now, I've had to record this video about 8 times because the recording keeps failing, so hopefully it's worked this time. If it has, I'm going to jump into my first recording session off the back of this one. I'm really excited to play. I hope you're as excited as I am to see how this goes. Who knows, I may fall over very, very quickly and have to refactor and try again. I really want to complete this campaign. I want to see if it's possible. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll join me to get through the campaign. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video. But for now, I bid you adieu. Ciao.